Former Pittsburgh Steelers offensive lineman Derwin Gray calls out the Steelers offensive line coach for underdeveloping him as a player and him basically have to rely on his teammates for his development. So, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they don't have one of the better coaching staffs in the NFL. And honestly, their offensive line coach has been terrible. It remains one of the smallest coaching staffs also in the league, and it's a possibility that a massive salary given to head coach Mike Tomlin could be one of the reasons why. But bringing in Arthur Smith to be the team's offensive coordinator after the 2023 season was one of the biggest hires in probably over a decade. You look at him, he was a former head coach, so him coming in, it was one of the bigger signings. But that doesn't take away from the fact that the other portions of the coaching staff is poorly coached. When you look at the offensive line coach, it just has not been good, and it has not been good for a while. Ever since Mike Munchak left the Steelers after the 2019 season, that was very detrimental to the team and the franchise, because since then, everything has been downhill, and the team's coaching staff has just been terrible. Since Munchak left, the Steelers have had SH0T, Adrian Clem, and current offensive line coach Pat Meyer, but none of those kind of trio of coaches have left the fan base impressed or even had any drastic difference on the way the Steelers conduct business as offensive line or improved any of the offensive line. It's actually shown that those coaches, since Mike Munchak have left, probably actually hurt the development of the Steelers offensive line as a whole, and the first round draft picks that the Steelers spent on the offensive line have probably gotten worse, and the Steelers free agency pickups that they've gotten from outside teams like the Eagles or the Bears and James Daniels, they've probably gotten worse since they came to the Steelers. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what Derwin Gray had to say about the former Steelers offensive line coach and basically the development of him while he was on the team. Derwin Gray, he was drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers in the 7th round of the 2019 draft, and he only logged 5 career games for the Steelers, and those came during the 2020 campaign. He recently appeared on the Strive Sports podcast and gave a bunch of credit to his former teammates for helping him develop because the coaching staff couldn't develop him as a player. So he had this to say. Here's his quote. "I really appreciate me being with an older line, such as Maurkice Pouncey. Shout out to Ramon Foster. I still look at Ramon Foster as one of my mentors. Dave DeCastro, Alejandro Villanueva, Matt Filer, we had BJ Finney, he was a backup. We had JC Hassenauer. We had guys that were there before me that did a really good job of training me to understand the maturity." End quote. But later on, he went on and said this. "To SH0T in Pittsburgh, I feel like I didn't learn as much from him. He was an O-line coach, but I feel like I didn't really get the coaching I deserved and needed to learn. I really learned it from my counterparts, guys like Maurkice Pouncey and Ramon Foster. Those guys really helped me come along." So, end quote. That is 100% valid in terms of his statement on how he feels about the coaching offensive line coach, but also his teammates. He feels though the offensive line coach didn't really help him, and he had to learn what he learned based off what the players have done in past years, and they really taught him. And who was their offensive line coach? It was Mike Munchak. Mike Munchak was Maurkice Pouncey's coach and all the other guys that he named before, so he was a guy who helped them. But since he left, the new offensive line coach wasn't really that guy, and that's why they ended up moving on from him years later. And then, obviously, he feels as though the offensive line coach hasn't really helped him develop, and he had to learn from his veterans. And that makes complete sense, because when you look at Mike Tomlin's coaching staff, it has been known to not have a strong coaching staff around him for the majority of his career. The offensive line has been especially terrible from a coaching perspective since Munchak left. It's rather baffling to hear a former player say that the coach he worked with the most did not do too much to help him improve his craft. And while SH0T wasn't in the city long, Gray's words are still a bad look for Tomlin, who hired SH0T, and just in general the offensive line coaching staff. Because right now the offensive line coaching staff is not good as well, and we expected him to be fired at the season's end, but he wasn't. So the Steelers are sticking with him, and that's basically probably still what's happening in Pittsburgh in terms of the offensive line coach, because it has been terrible, and it's been terrible for a while. So that's probably still what's going on. You having to learn from guys like Isaac Seumalo, James Daniels, the veterans. Those are probably what the rookies are having to learn from because the offensive line coach just hasn't been it and it still isn't it. So when looking back what Derwin Gray said, he said no disrespect. He's not trying to disrespect the offensive line coach in Sarrett, but it's true. When you look at him, he said he didn't feel as though he got what he should have deserved in terms of being an offensive line player from the coach. You have a specific coach and assistant coach working with you, but he didn't feel as though he got the deserved kind of learning that was supposed to be had there. So that's completely valid in terms of the coaches are supposed to coach up the players, not the players coaching up the players. Yes, you're supposed to learn from your teammates, but it's the coach that's supposed to get the job done. That's why you're a coach. So if you can't coach your team, then why are you even on the team? But this isn't even specifically about just Derwin Gray and what he has to say. This is about the Steelers coaching staff of the offensive line in general. Since we're on offensive line coach, let's talk about offensive line coach because Pat Meyer is offensive line coach right now. But when you look at the Steelers offensive linemen, they drafted Broderick Jones in the first round. They drafted Troy Fautanu in the first round. And so far in their NFL careers, have they looked good at offensive linemen? No, they haven't. They're first round talents. There's some really talented people. But the offensive line coach just has not put them in the right position to win. And that could be coaching, but that could also be the misdirection of putting them in the wrong spot on the offensive line. For example, both Troy Fautanu and Broderick Jones were left tackle in college. So moving Broderick Jones over to right tackle, that could be a coaching issue. And I know you could say that's a coaching issue on Mike Tomlin, but it's also the offensive line coach that has something to do with it. But not even just that. You would think that because you're a good offensive lineman, you may be able to switch positions. So it's on the coaching staff to help coach the player to switch the position. But obviously that's not working out. So that has not worked out for Broderick Jones so far in his first 2 seasons with the team. And you could say that's a coaching issue. You also look at Isaac Seumalo. Isaac Seumalo came over from the Eagles, and he had to switch positions from right guard to left guard. And you would think that that would make him still a solid player. But he's digressed a little bit from what he was doing with the Eagles. And you could say, once again, that's a coaching issue because you have to coach the guy up to switch a position. And you also look at James Daniels. James Daniels is basically the only one who has maybe elevated his game since the Bears. But even when he was with the Bears, he was a good player. So he still came over and he's doing what he's doing. Other than that, you look at the Steelers' offense line, and it just digressed throughout the season in terms of what they were doing. You look at the blocking schemes. The blocking schemes are not great. And once again, that is a coaching issue. You're coaching these players to do certain things as a scheme. And when they're doing it wrong, that's based off your coaching. Because the coaching scheme is not good. And it has not been good. And that's why we all expected maybe Pat Meyer to be fired at the season's end, because the Steelers' run game has not been good for many years now. Yes, you look at Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, and once in a while they'll both have great games and they'll both break out and they can rely on their run game. But for most of the time, they're not gaining much yardage at the line of scrimmage, and the offense line's not gaining much push. And that's also because you could have wrong schemes in terms of the blocking matchups and the pulling guards for no reason and doing certain things where they're not pulling guys. And just in terms of the routes that the offensive line are taking, that's based off the offensive line coach, but also the offensive coordinator as well. So the coaching staff for the Steelers need to be better. And it's kind of good to see a former player in Derwin Gray call it out, because we from the outside could only see it from how we see it, and we think there's something wrong. But when a former player says there is something wrong and they aren't getting the coaching that they deserve and need, then you know for a fact that something is going on in terms of the coaching, and something else needs to be switched to get it better. And that's exactly what's happening here with Pat Meyer and the Steelers coaching staff right now. And Derwin Gray called it out with the former offensive line coach. So once again, you're supposed to learn from the coaches and your teammates, not strictly your teammates. The teammates are getting paid to coach you up. That's what the coaching staff is for. And that's what the Steelers are paying these guys for. But obviously, they're not doing a good job. Anyway, this is the end of the video. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below on this topic of the offensive line coach and Derwin Gray calling them out. Do you believe that the Steelers should have fired Pat Meyer because he's not doing a good job? And how do you feel basically about Derwin Gray saying that he has to learn from his teammates because the Steelers coaching staff is not good, and he doesn't feel as though they gave him the direct coaching that he deserved coming into this league as a player. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news, updates, highlights, analysis, sports, everything surrounding the Pittsburgh Steelers. I cover it, so make sure you stay tuned to this channel for everything Pittsburgh Steelers this offseason on news and updates. And until the next video, I'll see you guys all later. I'm out. Peace.